In this video, I'm going to show you how to work with classes and objects. So I just created a new application. So you're going to go to Java application, go to new, and I named the application classes and objects. So this is the blank application. You can see there's the main method where everything starts. And what we want to do is to introduce you to classes and objects. So if you go into your project folder and you go into your last package, basically your package folder there before you get to your Java file, on that package folder I'm going to right click and I'm going to say new Java class. So we're going to call this class contacts and say finish. So this is just a simple Java class, which we will change now in order to basically create a class that we can use. So when working with classes and objects, to create a simple class, we need fields and we need methods. So for this contacts class, I'm going to create a few fields. All of them are going to be string. But remember, you can use any data type in order to do normal Java classes. So I'm going to say private string, and we're going to use a name for the contact. We're going to use a surname for the contact. We will also use an email for the contact, email address, and we will also use a number. So let's say cell number for the contact. So in this case, when we build an object of this type, we will basically work with a contacts object that will have a name, a surname, an email, and a cell number. Okay, so the next part that we need to do is to create some getters and setters so that we can get the properties called name, surname, email, and cell phone number. So in order to do that, all of our methods must be public. So you'll see all the fields must be private and all the methods must be public. So the getter methods will just start with a get. Now remember, it's not necessary for it to start with a get, but it's just good programming principle in Java. So we're going to say public get name. And basically what this method is going to do is just going to return a value. So in order to return a value, we need to add the string there. So either string or void. Void means that we're not going to return any value. So in this case, we're going to return a value. And this value that we're going to return will be the name property that we've got at the top. So the get name method will return name. Let's create the setter quickly. So for the setter, we're not going to return a value. So the value that we have there will be void, means we're not returning anything. And then normally we start the setters with a set keyword. Well, not a keyword, just the word set before your description. So in this case, setting the surname. And then in order to set something, we need to retrieve or need to get something in brackets there as a parameter. So we're going to say string in for the name that will be passed through. So now we're going to set our property at the top, which will just be name, equal to the property or whatever that was passed through here, the parameter that was passed through. And now we're setting our name variable at the top to whatever was passed through to this method. Now let's do the same for the other three properties there. So we're going to have a public string get surname, and that get surname will just return the surname property. So we're going to say return surname. And then we're going to get do the setter quickly. So it's going to be public void set surname. And remember, the method name is up to the programmer itself. It's not fixed for your method name. But in this case, we're calling it a getter method. So I start the method name with a get and with a set for the setters. So in this case, to set the surname, we're also going to accept a string as a surname. And then we're just going to set the value. So in this case, we're going to say surname equals that SUR that we passed through. There's some type of error here. It's already defined set surname. Oh, we already got a set surname. That should have been set name, not set surname. So that one should be get name and set name, get surname and set surname. Okay, next method will be for the email. So the getters and setters for the email. So it's going to be public string get email, where we will return the email. And note again, the email there is the email that we've got at the top there, part of the class. So we're going to say public void set email for the setter, and in brackets we're going to have, we can just add an E there for the email. And then we can go and say, well, we want to set our email field there at the top to this one that was passed through. So again, it's going to be email equals E. All right, so we've got get email and set email. So the last one is the cell number. So in order to do the cell number, it's going to be public string get cell number. And we're going to return the cell number. And then for the setter, it's going to be public void set cell number. And we're going to pass in the cell number. And then I'm going to set my cell number at the top to the cell number that was passed through. So it's going to be cell number equals cell. So you can note also that I'm not naming what I pass in the method the same as what I've got there at the top. We could do that, and if I want to do that, if I say name there to pass in the name, or pass in a name, and I want to set it to name there, you can see it's got a assignment to itself, because now Java doesn't know, am I referring to this one or am I referring to this one? It doesn't really know. So if you want to overcome that, you can just go and say this dot name, which will refer to the property of the class that's called name, not the one that was passed through. So then I can say this dot name equals the name that was passed through. If I click on that, you can see it highlights the one at the top. Now it knows which one I'm talking about, and if I click on that one, it shows the one that was passed through. Okay, so this is a basic, the most basic class basically that you can get is to have any number of fields and then having getters and setters for those fields. So the getter just returns the value, the setter receives a value in brackets as a parameter and then sets that value to your properties at the top. Now remember, when we create a new object, there's also a constructor, or there's always a constructor that actually runs and constructs this object. So if you do not supply a constructor, then it means that your specific application or your class will have the default constructor. So the default constructor looks basically something like this. And remember that a constructor has got the same name as the class. So it must be public contacts. You will also see that it does not have any return value, not even void. So this could be a default, well, your default constructor will look something like this. Actually, it will have name equals null. It will set all of your normal object type like strings. It will set it to null. If you've got integers or doubles or something here, then it will set it to 0. So let's just quickly set it up. So there we go. This is basically how your default constructor will look like. So it's basically a no argument constructor with just setting all the fields to either null if it's object based, otherwise it will send it to a 0 if it's an integer or a double value. Just note that when we add a constructor to the class like we did now, it means that there's no default constructor anymore. This is called a no arguments constructor, and this no argument constructor that I've created now is basically resembling your no or your default constructor. So if you do not supply a constructor at all to your class, then Java will automatically add a constructor that looks something like this. Okay, so this constructor that we've added now is not called a default constructor. This one is called a no argument constructor. Okay, so we can also go and add a normal constructor that accepts actually arguments. So we're going to say contacts again. And you'll see if I leave it like this, it's going to give me an error now because we already have a contacts constructor already defined in this class that does not accept anything, a no argument constructor. So in this case, we're going to set the name, surname, email, and cell phone number, passing them into this constructor. So we're going to send through a name. We're going to send through a surname. We're going to also send through an email of type string. And we're also going to send through a cell number. Okay, so now you can see Java is fine with it because this one has got no arguments in it and this one has got arguments in it. So this is a nice example of method overloading. Now what is method overloading? That is when we've got two methods with the exact same name but different signatures. So what is a signature? It's from the method name until everything that is included in the brackets. So in this case, this method signature is just the name and nothing in brackets, whereas this method signature is the name and all of these 4 different values in brackets. So the two are different, and that's why Java allows it. So this is called method overloading. Two methods with the same name but different signatures. Okay, so for this method, I'm going to refer to this.name. So what is this.name again? It's just referring to the name at the top, the one that's part of the contacts class, your instance variable. Okay, so this.name equals the name that will be passed through. And you see Java's got no problem with this one now. So name refers to that name. You can see it's highlighted. If I click on that name, it refers to that name. So I'm placing my instance variable, setting my instance variable to the value that was passed in. Okay, so I'm going to do the same for the surname. I'm going to do the same for the email. And I'm going to do the same for the cell number. Okay, so there you can see that basically for every one of these now, for every one of my instance variables at the top, I've set these values that was passed through. So two different constructors. This constructor will construct the object, setting the name, the surname, the email, and the cell phone number to a null value. Whereas this constructor will accept values in the constructor and then set my instance variables to those specific values. So this is a nice example of a normal Java class working with the getters and the setters. Also got the constructors. So just remember again that all of your instant fields must be private and all of your methods must be public. So even your constructor obviously must be public, otherwise you won't be able to use it outside of this class. Okay, so we've got these as private fields, but they are accessible using the public method. Get surname will for instance return that value. Set surname will change that value. Okay, so that's a basic class. I hope you understand basic classes. So if we go to our Java class, the one with the main method, in the main method now we can start testing our application. So in order to create a new object of this class, there's two constructors now. There's a contacts constructor that accepts nothing, and there's one that accepts the value. So we can go and say contacts, which is referring to this contacts class now, and we can say contact equals new contacts, and if I put nothing in brackets, it's basically going to create a new object that sets the name, the surname, the email, and the cell phone number to null. So that's the basic, the no argument constructor. Let's say we asked the user for some values. We said, well, please give me your surname. I'm not going to do that now. I'm just setting certain values there for the surname. So let's say that's the guy's surname. No, sorry, his name. Let's start with the name. And then we can go and say, that's the guy's surname. Let's say Peters. And then the guy's email address will be, let's say, jpeters@gmail.com. Please don't mail this guy. You won't find that email address, or maybe you will. Okay, then string. The last one will be the cell phone number of the guy, and then we can add it as a string as well. So let's say 089.213.4555. Also don't call that number. I don't know whose number that is. Okay, so there's the 4 values that we got that is actually part of every contacts object. So we're going to pass through. Now remember, you must have it the same values. First the name, then the surname, then the email, then the cell phone number. So I can just pass in the name as the first argument, the second one surname, then the third one the email, and then the fourth one the cell phone number. Okay, so there you can see Java's okay with this. If I leave out one of these arguments, you can see it cannot find that constructor that only accepts 3 values. So we've got one that accepts nothing, and we've got one that accepts 4. So that's the last one we need to add there. So that's the cell phone number, and now Java is happy with it. So now we've created a new object of type contacts that will have the name, whatever we pass through, the surname, the email, and the cell phone number, whatever we pass through. So it's going to set our name field to John, our surname field to Peters, email field to jpeters@gmail.com, and the cell phone number to the cell phone number. Okay, so now the new contact's been created, and we can actually now go and let's just print out the property. So we're going to say system.out.println. And what I'm going to do here is to say, I'm going to go to that contacts object of ours, that one, contact, and we're going to say .get, and you can see there's all the getter methods now. So I'm going to say get the name for me. I'm going to copy this line and just paste it for those 4 different values. So the second one will not be get name, but get the surname. The third one will be get the email, and the fourth one will be get the cell number. And those are the methods that we created there. Get name, get surname, get email, get cell phone number, which will just return the values. So if we run it now, I will basically get those values that we entered. So let's run it, and you can see it's John, Peters, the email address, and the telephone number. Okay, so let's say we want to use some of those setters now. So we can go and say contacts, or contact dot, and now if you type set and control and spacebar, you'll get all the setter methods. So there's set cell phone number, set email, set name, set surname. Okay, so if we're going to go to set name, then we can maybe change the name of the guy. So let's say we typed the name wrong, so we're going to say John, not Johan. And we're also going to set the email. Let's set the email as well. So the email, instead of J Peters, we can say Joe Peters @gmail.com. So now we're changing those values. So by setting it now, if we run it now, we are changing it to John, not Johan, and it's Joe Peters. Okay, so that's how the setters work. So the setters are changing the specific values in my object, and the getters are just returning the values. So this is a very nice example of classes in Java. I think one other thing that we can also do here is to just go and make sure that you guys understand the concept of method overloading. So I've already explained method overloading in the constructor. Let's see how we can also use another cell or set cell number. So we're going to say public void. I'm going to also call it set cell number. But now in this case, instead of putting a string in there, I'm going to put a long value. So it's just a long integer, and also call it cell. So now will Java allow this method? Yes, it will, because the 2 methods has got the same name, but they've got different signatures. Remember, that part is the signature, not the return type included, only the part from the method name until the arguments that was passed through. So set cell number there accepts a long, and this one accepts a string. So Java will allow it. And then I'm going to just set my cell number, my property at the top, that cell number there, I will just set to cell. But now there's a problem, because setting an integer, a long integer, to a string won't work. So maybe we could do something like this. We start off with a 0 and then adding whatever the guy typed. So we can use it like this now. If we go to classes and object again, we can say contact.set cell number. And now remember, there's two methods now called CellNumber. So how will Java know which method to go to? So well, it depends on the value that you place in brackets. So if I say set the cell number to 09, well, let's just add that one again, 089 213 4 whatever. Let's say that's the cell phone number. Because I've added a string there, you can see Java has no problem with it, no errors. If I save, you can see the errors are gone. It will go to the one that accepts a string, and it will just set the number. But if I add an integer value there, so let's just say we leave out the 0 there, and we just add the integer, Java does not have a problem at all. But now what's going to happen? It's going to use the second one now that accepts the long integer. It's first going to append a 0 and then the integer value. So it doesn't matter which one I use. If I run it, at the end, it will give me the cell phone number. Okay, so this is classes and objects. I hope you guys understand. Please come and ask if there's anything that you do not understand.